Kia ora koutou, ko Michael Morris toku ingoa. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's hearing. I'm Michael Morris, Manager of Governance and Legal at the Invercargill City Council. It is my privilege to welcome everybody to today's joint hearing with our friends and colleagues from the Gore District Council. My duty at this stage is to just advise visitors to our fabulous council chambers that that toilets are just out in the foyer. In the event of fire evacuation, please follow staff down the stairs and outside to the SIT campus. For those of you who have been in the city for a long time, you will know it is the former St John's Church. In the event of an earthquake, you all know the drill. Please drop, cover and hold and await further instructions from the staff. And I can assure you, for anyone who has not experienced an earthquake up on this first floor, it is fairly rolly. But we're not inviting any of that today. So it is at this stage, it falls to me to invite from the councillors for nominations to chair today's hearing. So I now open that up.
Thank you, Michael. Can I please nominate Councillor Phillips and Councillor Crackett to act as co-chairs today?
And is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Fabulous, thank you. I will put that. All of those in favour?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you, co-chairs. Please take it away and I will take my leave once I've made sure that everything is working from this end.
All right, so first on the agenda this afternoon we have no apologies. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Okay, cool. Obviously we've had our appointment of our chair. Do we need to move that we have no apologies? No, cool. We have in our agenda our hearings timetable. Can I have a mover for that? Thank you, Andrea. Seconder.
Right.
Carried. Our first hearing slot that we have this afternoon is Mike. So welcome this afternoon.
Thank you.
It's good to see you again.
Yep, thank you. Right, so I'm Mike Peters. I'm the chair of Disabled United. So this waste thing just sort of came up actually, so it's not really related to your glass option. There was we're a national network as well as having branches in different parts of the country, and I was party to a discussion that I was overhearing on Facebook basically, where a bunch of ladies in wheelchairs was talking about how terrible it was with the waste bins, getting rid of incontinence waste, because they can't flush it down the loo. I'm going to call a spade here. So they're using wipes and bags and stuff, and so bags get really full. Now, the bins get full, and they might need an extra bin. Some of them have disabled children, so it might run in the family, and then they've got several children and lots of waste, and you're in a wheelchair and you're trying to push one of these giant bloody bins out to the curb. It's a nightmare. And then so it was a whole lot of them all chipped in and they're all talking about it. And then I sort of started asking around down here and other parts of the country, and I've discovered actually it's a real issue down here too. And people are too embarrassed to talk about it. I'm autistic. I'm not the slightest bit embarrassed about talking about anything, I can tell you. I'll call a spade. So what they need is different size bins. Maybe 2 bins rather than 1 bin, or maybe 2 bins or an extra bin because I've got lots of waste, and the little ones will be easier to handle than the bigger ones. Now the main barrier, it seems to me down here, is that the bloody the trucks here, which are the same ones that are in Christchurch, can't deal with the different size bins, but the ones in Christchurch can. So it just needs a modification with the arms. Then you can have the big bins and the little bins. You just change the lids. They do it there for exactly the same reason. My wife's in a wheelchair. She's having all kinds of surgery done at the moment because of Burwood and all the rest of it. And she's got a little bin. And then there's a big bin next to it. And it's both yellow ones or both red ones, and they both go out. There's not an issue. So why not just modify the bloody trucks and make these bins available? Now, we would be very happy, Disabled United would be very happy to help in a discreet way behind the scenes to help sort some of this stuff out, if you like. It's a very, if you can imagine, for a lot of people, it's a very embarrassing issue. So it needs to be done discreetly. And if you wanted to do something, my suggestion was to do something about, for instance, eligibility for extra bins because of incontinence and stuff. It could just be done through the doctors. You know, just some simple way. So they don't have to go to the counter. They don't have to ring anybody up. It just happens. And it's not a special trip by a truck. Right? You don't want to do that. It's just like part of the normal system. So it's all discreet and it just happens. That's it.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions for Mike?
It's not a question, it's just a thank you on our behalf to submitting. Thanks very much for the information, and I'll take on board what you've said, and we'll pass it back on to the WasteNet group.
Yeah. It's a national problem. It's right throughout the country.
Yeah.
And also, with an ageing population, it's getting hard. It's going to get more and more older people, and some of them, lots of them, will be hard, and they don't need the giant bin. They want a little one. You know, and it's just, I live in a disabled housing area, for social housing area that Kaingaroa have got, and full of disabled people. And it's like, luckily we've got a few able-bodied neighbours who take the bins out for a lot of the frail ladies and things, and it's like, it's not good enough.
Shall I have a question?
And it's fixable.
Yep, thank you, Michael. You're speaking my language, actually. I have a disabled daughter, so I know sort of what you're talking about. Have you approached the Christchurch Council in relation to this, and have you had any feedback from them?
No, I've talked to my wife Tracy, who's one of our committee, just up there at the moment, and she did a bit of investigating. And she just said, no, it's just the trucks. She found out it's just the truck arms. So your truck arms here can't deal with the different sizes. It just needs a modification. They're built to do it. I mean, any decent engineer can fix these things. I mean, I used to be an engineer myself. You know, it's not complicated stuff. Maybe it needs another ram or another, you know, whatever, solenoid or something to make it work.
Right. Hi, Michael. One question. You've talked a little bit about how this is a nationwide problem. Have you seen any actual examples of something working well across the country?
Well, in Christchurch, they have the different size bins.
Just so that would be the only
Well, the main thing
solution?
is having two different size bins, but also people being able to very easily get an extra bin. And I heard through the conversation, I haven't done a survey on it, but just the discussion, it seemed to be different responses in different parts of the country. So some parts were okay, and some parts were just, the councils were impossible to deal with. And then these poor people trying to deal with it. And it's like, why not just have a national standard? Why not just fix this problem? And we could fix it, you could fix it here really easily. And it just needs to be talked about. I mean, we're going to raise it nationally. We're going to start kicking up about this and the whole thing, because this is outrageous. It should not in 2025. This shouldn't be happening. And it's such a simple solution.
Thank you very much for coming in again, Mike. It's a
You're
pleasure
welcome.
as always. Really appreciate your advocacy.
Yeah, and we're very happy to help behind the scenes, because you might not know people who are in this situation, but we certainly do.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing it to our
really
attention.
appreciate
Guinea pigs, you know,
Yeah,
try it out.
we'll see you next time. Thanks, Mike. Well, so we'll just hold for a couple of minutes until the members of the Youth Council arrive, whom we have Levi and Miracle this afternoon.
for coming, Carolyn, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Councillor Neville Phillips from the GDC, and this is a shared service between our 3 councils. But this one is about submissions only from Gore District Council and ICC. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Kia ora. I'm Carolyn Weston, and I'm chairperson of the New Zealand Association of the Blind Southland Branch. And we put in a submission about the proposed new regime regarding the rubbish and the recycling, glass and green waste bins. Now, of course, there's lots of information we don't really know about at this stage, as it's not gone into too much detail, but some concerns about the proposal. We do think it's a good idea, but it can create issues with regards to accessing the built-up environment, which means our cities and towns and countryside, and that is that the number of bins being out on footpaths or grass verges, and that can create issues for blind, vision impaired and deafblind people. People do use walking white canes and guide dogs, and I've got a walking frame, and some people even had to use wheelchairs that are vision impaired as well. So we usually take a little bit wider across a footpath. Now, where we live at present, it's quite good because the bins are on the grass, so you're not going to normally walk on the grass. But where we used to live in Ingram Street, the footpath was very narrow, and outside our house, we didn't have any grass. And so when I used to walk with my guide dogs, sometimes when the bins were out, well, I always tried to avoid the days when it was rubbish day to walk with my dog, but I had to sometimes. And it was very difficult to get round the bins, especially after the trucks dumped them in the middle of the footpath, and to try and find your way around with a guide dog, or say if it was walking with a walking frame, it's very difficult to find your way. I had trouble finding the door today out down the stairs. So when you can't see what's there, it's quite difficult. Another issue, of course, is knowing which bin to put things in. We presume that it sounds like the bins will be different sizes, and so that is really good. But I know with recycle bin, you've got to put 1 and 2, is it 5 number for plastic? Well, I can't feel the 1. I don't know why it's so small. I was thinking actually everybody should learn a little tiny bit of Braille. We could have 1 dot A, that's 1 dot, for 1, 2 dots like that, it's B for 2, and for 3 you could have the C. And so that would be easy for everyone to feel. It would be a good way of using Braille, and everyone can learn a little bit of Braille instead of trying to feel the 1 and the 2, because they're just too small. So I always have difficulty knowing which plastics to put in the plastic. And so with glass, if you're totally blind, clear glass is okay, but you won't know if the bottles can be clear or if they're going to be brown or green unless they've got a special shape and you know the shape. So some of those issues will be a problem. So I think the major issue is going to be accessing our streets. And if it's windy, like we've been having lots of wind lately, people are good at putting their rubbish bins out. But once they're empty, they start flying all around the streets sometimes, especially on the 23rd of October, was it? When we had that mighty storm. I don't know where the bins would have ended up, but they wouldn't have been where they were supposed to be. So, we're just concerned that we don't know enough about the safety and the access to the built-up environment in town. And we don't know how many bins are going to be out each day. Like, do you put maybe 2 bins out one week and the other 2 bins out the following week? If the one bin is quite small for glass, say, if the glass, how well is that going to stay where it's put on the footpath? If it's a windy day, it's quite windy outside today. And so if it moves around, then someone could, trip and fall over it, or it could be quite dangerous. So that was our major concern.
Great submission. Thank you very much for turning up. What have I got? 5, 6 issues there I've written down. So is there any questions from any of the councillors here?
I've got one, Councillor Phillips. Thank you for coming in today and explaining those issues, which is often, unless you're living through that experience, you can quite often not be aware of. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'm really interested to know, because obviously this is probably not a problem unique to Invercargill or Southland. And are you aware of any ways that are currently implemented across the country where cities or regions do this really well, that you would be able to share with us?
I'd have no information at this stage, but I could certainly do some research and get back to you about any issues that are being raised in other cities and solutions, because it's the solutions we need, isn't it?
And sorry, one more question, if that's okay. What support do you currently get to manage your rubbish, and who is responsible for that? Is it completely reliant on family members to help you with moving the bins out, or navigating that? Or is it the carers? Is it neighbourhood support, or?
Well, it depends on the individual. I mean, I've got a husband who puts our bins out, and I do put recycle stuff into the recycle bin and rubbish into the rubbish bin by myself sometimes. I don't know if I put the wrong things in the recycle sometimes, but we never have a note to say you put the wrong things in, so thank goodness for that. But and they never said, sorry, we're not taking your recycle stuff anymore because you're putting the wrong things in, so that's good to know. But it depends on the individual. Some people have families living with them, but some people live alone, and blind people like to be independent like everybody else. So if you're living by yourself, often it's yourself that is doing, you shouldn't have to rely, I mean, we do, of course, but you're trying to be as independent as possible. And so you could have some young, strong man who's lost his sight, who goes out and walks around the city quite a lot and puts his own bins out. But then you might have someone a bit elderly that has a support person. So, everybody's unique, and so it just depends on the individual and what their needs are and what their capabilities are. Because we all have not just disabilities, but we all have abilities as well.
A question from Councillor Fraser.
Thanks, Carolyn. It's Andy Fraser here from the Gore District Council. And you brought up a couple of points there, and one of them was you just said then about that you're putting the right stuff in your bin, but if we have the bin checkers go out and they put the note on your bin to say you've done it wrong, if you're blind or visually impaired, how are you going to know?
I don't know.
That is something that probably we need to think about. But second to that, you were saying the identification, like the marks on the bin, you would like them to identify which bin is which, to be of a size that you could go, bang, I know which size bin it is.
Yeah, because I know some places, like in Timaru, they might have a green bin for their green waste, and they might have a yellow bin for recycle and a red bin for rubbish. I don't know if they have glass stuff there at Timaru, but anyway, I know even in the house I get confused at my sister's, because in the kitchen she has different bins for different things, and it gets quite confusing knowing which one is which. But, if you're totally blind, or if you're colourblind, a lot of people are colourblind and they're not even vision impaired, you sometimes don't know what the colours of the lids are. And so if it's looking at coloured lids, then, and all the same size bins, a person like, I can see colour, so I'm okay, but people, some of our members wouldn't be able to see colour at all, either because they're colourblind or they're totally blind. And so having a different colour lid on a bin doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be identified to everybody in the community.
So further question, Councillor Crackett here. Hello again, Carolyn. Would Braille be the most easily identifiable way to identify each bin, if they were all the same sized bin, or would it be? Is there any kind of other identifier that would be easy for you to determine which colour bin it is?
I personally would love to have Braille. It's a way of getting people to even learn grade 1 Braille, which is quite easily, because, like you just, as I said before, 1 dot is A, 2 dots is B, and 2 dots is C, and then you've got 3 dots, which I can't do so easily, D. But a lot of blind people don't learn Braille, but it would give them a good reason to learn first, 3. So I would absolutely love you to do that. That would be great.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Your submission was outstanding as per usual. Thank you very much for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you. Now I've got to get up. Sorry about this. I'm going to take a bit of
Staff here.
It's all right.
Okay.
You take all the time you need.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Levi and Miracle from the Invercargill City Youth Council. Welcome this afternoon. Real Levi, so 5 minutes to chat and 5 minutes for questions. Floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you. So kia ora, I'm Levi Te Amo, this is Miracle Kabuya, and we are representing the Invercargill City Youth Council and their submission to the Kerbside waste consultation. Ultimately, we decided to go for option 2, but with specific amendments that we would suggest to the panel today. So we initially workshopped the Kerbside waste consultation with our youth council, debating options, and ultimately came to a split vote between option 1 and option 2, with no votes for option 3. We decided to go for option 2, given its balance between environmental effectiveness and cost effectiveness. So adding the separate waste glass bin and a green waste bin. Our suggestion was to first add the separate glass bin as part of the decision at the start, and considering the green waste bin at some point in the timeline of the long-term plan. We figured that this would be good for ratepayers at a lower cost initially, and over time easing into that. So we also would like to make the suggestion for 240 litre green waste bins for those who want it, given different households produce different amounts of green waste. And our main focus is diverting food organics and garden organics from landfills, with the high rate, 58% going into landfill in Southland. We would also like to suggest moving to a smaller red general waste bin or fortnightly collections to reduce landfill costs. We specifically went for option 2 with the glass bins because broken glass means contamination in recycling at the moment. So with broken glass in recycling, whole truckloads of waste can end up in landfill. So a separate glass bin would mean protecting this recycling stream and reducing the waste overall. We know that the amount of food organics and garden organics going into landfill is a significant greenhouse gas contributor, and we'd like to keep Invercargill aligned and improving with the rest of the country in slowing this down. Our stage approach would introduce the separate glass bin at no additional cost to ratepayers, and considering the green bin in the long-term plan will ease financial pressures. The reason we are offering the 240-litre bin for homes that generate more waste is because talking to our youth councillors, we know that their families and living all in different areas of Invercargill, we see different outputs. You'll see in our non-service areas comment, some of our youth councillors live in non-service areas, but we do not still recommend expanding into rural zones at this time, with consideration to ratepayers. They don't feel and we don't feel it's necessary at the moment. Overall, that's our submission, pretty simple, just with those suggestions from us and our youth council. That's what we have.
I think that's overall everything that we've done. Yep.
Thank you, guys. Councillor Fraser, I'm from Gore. Hey, I read through this, like the submission, everything else like that. Do you realise that out of AB Lime they're collecting the methane that is coming out?
One more time.
Do you realise that AB Lime, where most of our waste goes, that they actually collect methane and use it that's coming from that?
Yes, absolutely. We still realise the environmental impacts overall of having food organics and garden organics in landfill. Aside from methane, we just think it could be better managed. Yeah.
I appreciate that, because I'll let you, I'm a boomer, so it's easy for me to say this because we get blamed for everything. So on that note, you're going to collect it and go somewhere else. It's still going to rot somewhere and produce greenhouse gases, unless there's a way that we can deal with it. Have you ever thought about how that was going to happen?
Youth Council, I can't speak on behalf of all of us specifically for that, but that is something we can look into. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm Andrew DeVries, Councillor Andrew DeVries from Invercargill City Council, and I'm sure I'll be meeting you guys soon in Youth Council. Thank you for your submission. I'm just really interested in what the common practices are, because you're quite passionate in the submission around food and green waste or organic waste. What are the common practices that you're seeing in your age group and in the youth sector around waste minimisation or diversion of that waste? Are there practices you're seeing, Gen Alpha?
Gen Alpha? Yeah, I suppose it's a lot about how we as individuals consume different products and stuff. I think definitely we're seeing a shift in our generations towards more sustainability focused consumption and use of things. Specifically, couldn't tell you, but I think that's something we can bring back to a youth council and discuss.
Yeah, I'd just be really interested to hear how practically the youth that are really passionate about waste minimisation, and I am too, but what are you doing in practice in your own homes, and what are you seeing across your your friend groups or your social groups around what other people are doing? Are they looking for ways to recycle when they're at school or events or just out and about? Just really keen to understand the trends from you.
Absolutely. Personally, I'm all about less packaging, less stuff that will, like plastics, that will go into landfill, reusable containers, stuff like that.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you very much for workshopping a really comprehensive submission. There's some really awesome insights there. I particularly appreciate your suggestion of the phasing, which we'll definitely take into account when we have our deliberation.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next submission is Kylie. Are you here? Welcome, Kylie. Thank you very much for your submission. I'm Councillor Neville Phillips from the Gore District Council.
Sorry, I'm terrible hearing. And
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm Neville Phillips, Councillor, Gore District Council.
Oh, yeah.
This is a joint submission on ICC and GDC. And welcome, and thank you very much for your submission. And
Look, I didn't have a lot more to add, but Tim Shadbolt always used to say sadly you can't do submissions on submissions, and the verbal submission is actually a way that you can do that. So I wanted to utilise, after looking through most of the submissions, there were quite a few, that I know Council's preferred option was to not include green waste, and I just really wanted to say primarily is please do not go and change that and add the green waste. I notice a lot of people in the submissions asking for the green waste to be added. And while I understand that sentiment for people that are directly affected, there are so many people that don't need that. And we're going to end up with, 4 wheelie bins on small properties, as we're now starting to go to smaller properties nowadays. I mean, I'm out in Bluff, quarter acre. Most of us can either compost it ourselves or take it to the tip. I would say the biggest hindrance in the green waste thing and people hiding things in their red bin, which is what they're doing, because I noticed that they're saying something like 57% was organic waste. Now, I find it mind-boggling that that's all food waste, so I'm sure people must be hiding green waste. I know of people that do it. And I think the main fix for that is to start looking at, especially in places like Bluff, where they just chuck it in a pile. Why is that being charged? I would contend that it's pretty much central government legislation, and that is increasing waste costs to everyday people. To take a double axle trailer down to Bluff of green waste, which is going to be dumped in a pile, is somewhere around $80. That's just unachievable, and most of that is in waste levies and climate change stuff. But the reality is, no matter where it rots down, it's going to do its methane or whatever it is now, And so we can at least say, rather than people dumping it in our landfill, ruining our waste management plan that we're doing to have it at the waste, have it that they can drop it off, free of charge. We've just had one in Bluff, in town, people were doing trailer loads by the thing. That's how committed people are. They're happy to get rid of it, but it's the cost. It's cost prohibitive for most people. So I would just hope that you guys don't change your mind and say, lots of people wanted green waste, because there was a lot of people that always commented saying they paid $11 a pickup to have it picked up from their home. Well, if you guys started doing green waste, you'd impinge on those businesses. And let's be realistic, councils don't innovate, businesses do. So I think that sort of thing should be left to businesses and let them evolve and take over that role. But council's thing, is to make it free or have more of the free days. Probably not totally free, but reduced. But yeah, I think central government is our biggest problem in cost here. And I find that rather offensive, and that's where I'd actually like you guys to lobby central government more on our behalf. That's how I see the system works. We lobby you, you lobby for us to there. And I don't think that's being done enough. I think that too often you guys are, all councils, let me say that, not just you guys, all councils are reactive to central government, and I think there needs to be more proactivity. Even in things like there's an organisation that's trying to get the bottle deposit scheme. They've been trying for years. I believe councils should get behind them and try and get and support them. And they've been lobbying central government for years. But yeah, really it was just, please don't change the green waste. Let either reduce it at tip places or let private sector do it. And to be frank, I think most people find the whole system of recycling a bit of a mockery. We're all full of gusto at the start, but then when you read things like, oh, we're burying some more glass out the beach, you know. So I know that between me and my friends, we call it relocating, as not recycling, because that's all we're really doing. And I know we can't do the slow boat to China anymore, but we're still putting it on a slow boat or a slow truck to somewhere. And unless we're going to innovate things within New Zealand, I contend that there's probably not a lot of viable use out of the plastic that we're even doing now that's going through Recycle South. So, I mean, yeah, I would like either council to jump on board and actually innovate stuff here or support private sector to do that sort of thing. But no, I don't just want you guys to take it all off 4 bins at everyone's thing. I understand the need for glass, but I would also ask that maybe the council could look at doing a trial out at the Queen's Park Golf Course. There are some golf courses that use glass sand for their bunkers now. It's been done for at least a decade. I know Queensland's trialling it, and so that you can grind it up right back to sand again and put it in your bunkers. And that's something, since you guys own a golf course, you could do that. But yeah, that's primarily my rant. Yep.
Thank you very much, Kylie. Is there any questions from any of the councillors? No, everyone seems to be quite happy. Thank you very much for your submission,
Okay.
and
Thank you.
thanks. Have a good day.
Kylie.
Thank you. So welcome, Jodie. Thank you for coming today and with your submission. And I'm Councillor Neville Phillips. And welcome, and it's all yours. Thank you.
Right. I guess I want to start by saying New Zealand has an epic waste problem. And we've been incredibly complacent about it for generations. I have the privilege and the joy of having worked in this sector for the last 20 years. And part of my career has been spent dealing with the ongoing effects of what we've done to our environment, especially in terms of waste management and disposal. I think it's a really serious issue. I take it very seriously, and I think that we actually have a responsibility now to take some accountability and to look at things in a slightly more long-term way. So as we stand in New Zealand, we generate about 237 kilograms per person per year of putrescible waste. So we talk about putrescible waste, it's not just your green waste from your garden, it's your food waste, it's bones, it's anything that breaks down in the environment. When that goes to landfill, it becomes irretrievable. It can no longer be used as an asset. I appreciate that the councillor said that AB Lime has been capturing their methane and they do intend to use that as waste to energy. I would argue that you could still get the benefits of that from operating an efficient composting scheme, and then you would still have a resource that was also saleable at the end of that. Once you start generating leachate through waste and it picks up heavy metals and other contaminants through that waste stream, it becomes an ongoing problem, and you're now trucking leachate back to Invercargill. It is not being fully treated. It is going through your wastewater treatment plant that goes into our ocean. Now, whatever residual levels are in there, it's complying with consents, but I don't believe that those vehicle movements are an appropriate use of resources. So I wanted to back this up a little bit. A long, long time ago, when I was in my 20s and young and idealistic, I worked for Timaru District Council. And part of my job there was involved in rolling out their new 3-bin system. And the reason that they were doing that was because their landfill was full and they did not want to spend the money to build another one, and they had to really think very, very carefully about how they allocated their resourcing and costs. And they concluded that the best way to manage that landfill life and extend its life was by diverting as much waste out of it as they possibly could. That was in 2006 that I worked on that program. They started working on that program in about 2000 and planning it. So at the moment, we are 25 years behind a small council with a low ratings base and a population that is only about 2/3 of the size of Invercargill City. Okay, they made that decision based on purely financial reasons. They could not afford to construct another landfill. They did not want to have to ship their waste up to Cape Valley. I appreciate that we have a modern, new, closed-cell landfill. I think that the best beneficial use of that landfill, because we do have waste that needs to be put in those kinds of disposal locations, is that we keep it for the things that we do not want to have interacting with our environment. There are many, many things that we dispose of daily that are not suitable for recycling or reuse. But we generate, by and large, most of our waste as either recyclable or putrescible waste, which could be composted. I live on a 1/4 acre section. I'm able to compost. I have a large garden. I have no underlying health issues. I'm not reliant on stoma bags. I'm not reliant on catheter bags. I don't have children where I'm using disposable nappies. So I'm in a pretty privileged position. I don't suffer from any disabilities. I can take my bins down the driveway. The truck comes and takes them away. We had exactly the same situations in Timaru and throughout the country 25 years ago. And instead of saying, you must have the large green bin, we made sure that people who were living in units, who were disabled, who had special health problems, were actually consulted, and we went and worked with those people. And we designed solutions to fit their requirements. Most of the pensioner flats that we worked with ended up with a stacking 3-bin system. It was no larger than a 140-litre bin. We implemented weekly collections for people who were disposing of things like human waste with stoma bags. It's not difficult to think about the vulnerable people in your community and design something accordingly. But most of the time, people are able to follow this kind of system. It's not difficult. One of the things that I've had to do in my career is dealing with the legacy of contaminated land in New Zealand. And I can tell you that the West Invercargill landfill, which occupies the space of land between Victoria Avenue and down to the previous closed landfill, is still generating landfill gas. I have personally collected methane emissions from wells at the northern end of that landfill, which have been closed for over 60 years, that are generating explosive levels of methane gas. We cannot keep sticking things in the ground and expect to not have to manage them going forward. I think it's really important that this be looked as a resource. This is something that we've taken out of the land that we have made, and that we shouldn't be just throwing away and not respecting the wairu and the Māori of how that came to be in our possession. It seems really socially irresponsible for us not to take this really seriously now and actually make some difficult decisions.
That's it?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I think everybody else has covered it. I think the students covered it really well.
As well, yeah. Thank you so much, Jodie. Do you want to?
So is there any questions from councillors, or Andy, you okay?
I've got a question in the meantime while Councillor Fraser is having a look. Do you have, with your quite obvious, extensive experience. Firstly, yeah, thank you very much for your submission. It was really excellent. With your extensive experience, have you got examples of best practice diversion parks or bits and pieces like that you've seen around the country?
I think in my experiences of the Canterbury Timaru experience is probably the best sort of applicable option to Southland in terms of the population and the types of waste being generated. Obviously, we're not Auckland. We don't have more than 1 million people in our area. I think personally that this is not just a waste at the waste end issue. I really do think that we have a lot of issues in terms of how packaging is generated and how we're treating food. That 237 kilos, about half of that is actually pre-consumer waste. So that's before it even hits the supermarket. We are wasting that much food, which is quite daunting and upsetting when you think about people not being able to eat. And it's happening in our community now. There are things that we need to be doing with these things, and dealing with things at the waste end is only one part of the overall jigsaw, I think, that we need to deal with.
Can you talk a little bit more about the stacking option, the 3-stacker that you said?
So they just
that's like
do you
the same size as the...
Yeah, do you remember when people used to just have recycling crates?
Yes,
back in the day? So they were sort of more or less about that size. I think they were about 40 litres each. And they just stacked. So they had a green bin, a yellow bin and a red bin, which would be similar to, I think, what you would be doing here. And they just had, they were sealed units, and they just had a little lid at the front that you could open and put your waste into, and then it just wheeled down.
So it wheeled down in the same fashion that a regular wheelie bin would, but of course it was only the one unit, so it was still able to be picked up by the same recycling truck?
I think they did have to do it manually just because of separating the bins out, obviously. But it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a huge proportion of the ratepayers that ended up opting for that. It was really where they had small sections, or they were dealing with units and apartments and those sort of things. And I would say that there's other ways of dealing with that as well. If you're dealing with, inner city living, then there are other ways that you could design around that. It might be more towards communal bins or those sorts of things. Thank you.
Thank you for that submission. And I was reading through and just listening to you talking away about, you've got an extension of history in this. And one of the things you did mention in your submission was that we do have around Southland a lot of old tips that are going to cause a lot of problems as time goes on. But that's something we're going to have to deal with. Extensively with your history worldwide, we look at Singapore, they incinerate everything. Is there an option out there that you've seen or read about that you think that would be great?
Okay, so my area that I've been working in most recently, I've just done 17 years in contaminated land management. So the work that I do is very much about what happened after you stuck something in Grandma's garden 60 years ago. And I have had the gamut. I've had everything from people trying to dispose of their husband's DDT that they found in the garden shed right the way up to, whole landfills. I don't think that incineration is ever the first option. I can see how it works in a country like Singapore, where it's a small area, large population, nowhere to send it, and a lot of Singapore is actually built on landfill. When you burn something, even at very, very high temperatures, you're still destroying a resource. And I think that realistically, if you were looking at the population of Southland or even of New Zealand, incineration to energy of those kinds of strategies don't really fit the way that our country is laid out and the kinds of things that we're doing, much less the population base that we have. I really do think, old-fashioned compost is the sort of thing that you can do. You can do this at high heat. You can cap it, you can contain it, you can collect the leachate and the methane still. So you can still generate methane and capture that and use it as an energy source. You have a saleable resource at the end of it, and the other benefit is that when you're using large-scale composting, you can deal with things that you would not domestically compost. So things like bones, meat, those kinds of things all can go in there and they will break down. You can put toxic weeds in there because it goes at a hot enough temperature that it actually kills them off. So it's not just a situation of, oh yeah, I've got my lawn clippings. It actually can be every kind of organic material that you generate.
And my second part is that when you talked about, how many kilos per year every person sort of produces, and from that you said half of that could be, well, part of it, I don't have to get that right, was pre-packaging. Not saying
it's
that's it, but it's-
pre-consumer.
Yeah.
It's pre-consumer organic
Pre-consumer,
waste.
yes. That is something that we can't deal with, but that's something that needs to be dealt with at a different level. And that sort of, because you go buy something, there's always some sort of packaging involved in it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this was not about packaging.
But
This is actual pre-consumer food waste.
right,
Purely food waste. It is the carrots that don't look right. It is the onions that were oversupplied for your contract. It is your dead stock. It is your crops that failed. It's all of that is organic waste. It's not about the wrapper that your lettuce came in. Kia ora.
So thanks very much, Jodie. I've got a few notes down here and to bring back to staff and to WasteNet. Got a little bit of a pun here of food for thought for me. And yeah, I quite like couple of your ideas, and thank you very much for turning up today with your submission, and have a good day. Thank you.
So I will move that we receive the ICC report for curbside waste options for ICC, hearings and deliberations.
Second that.
All those in favour?
And item number 6, the curbside waste option for Gore District Council hearings and submissions report. I have a mover.
Yep.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You go.
No, after you.
All right, so thank you to everybody who is watching us today on the live stream, or has come in to speak to us in person, or has taken the time to write in for their submissions. And also those who have taken the time to speak to somebody in person, attend the workshops, or post on social media even. It's every single voice that we hear helps us form our decisions. Can I have a mover that we go into PE?
Yep.
So we will move into public excluded for the reasons set out in the agenda. And a seconder? Yep. Thank you, Councillor Fraser. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.